I was born in Berlin, which was the capital then and is now again the capital from Germany. And my father was a military high-ranking officer in Hitler's army, and he was sent. He also was in the military academy. He was a teacher. He was a weapons specialist. And the Japanese at that time was the only country that was in cahoots with Germany. All the other countries.
And Hungary.
And Hungarian, yeah. And my father was sent on a secret mission, which had something to do with weapons. And Hitler ordered us to leave Germany and move into Poland, because 1939 Hitler started the war in Poland, and Stalin and Hitler made a pact. Stalin wanted the 3 Baltic countries. My mother is from Estonia, but my mother is a German Baltic person, and Latvia and Lithuania. And Hitler said, okay, you can have those 3 countries, give me the entire Polish corridor from Poznan to Warsaw along a river Warta. If you have a detailed map from Poland, you can find the river Warta smack in the middle. That's where we lived. But we didn't really get a home there or anything, but Hitler said to my grandparents, I say this ahead of time, my grandparents were very wealthy landowners. My grandfather was a baron, and he was the wealthiest landowner in all of Estonia. So Hitler said, okay, you have to come out of Estonia now, because Stalin is going to get that country, but we reimburse you in Poland with castles and land and everything, so you will not lose anything. What the German SS officers did, they threw out the Polish counts and princes and barons, whatever, and sent them to a collective camp, and then they were shipped out to concentration camps. Several of my uncles, unfortunately, were SS officers, and they were part of getting the people out of their homes. So we moved into their castle. So I was partially raised at my younger years in a Polish castle. And my uncles and aunts from Estonia, they lived there. They really got reimbursed with everything. They got their horses, their land, their everything. And we had a Nazi school, and I went to a Nazi-driven school, and it was terrible the way they treated us, because I didn't greet my classroom teacher with Heil Hitler. I had 2 long braids, and the teacher came, pulled one braid down, and slapped me in the face. Those were some punishments, plus in a big black book I got a black cross, and if you had 10 crosses you got severely punished. It was very, very, very strict upbringing. And then in 1945, well, I had a governess, and we had a cook, and we had a maid, and we kind of lived it up, but being Germans, we invaded the Polish country, so you can imagine that the Polish people were mad as terrible to us. And it just was a very, very difficult kind of a life. And one day our governess took us on a walk to pick up something, and we saw a train stop in the middle of our village in Poland, and they had this, it was a cattle car, but all I saw was heads and arms and people in there. Those were hundreds and hundreds and thousands of Jewish people that were brought to Auschwitz, which came through our way. And we met a little boy who was in tattered rags, and I said, he looks so hungry. And so my governess, who was a Nazi too, she said, oh, just leave him alone, he's only a Jew. There was a terrible, terrible ingrained by Hitler in the ideology. The Jews, the Polish people, the Russians, Slovak peoples, the Balkan people, Hitler all named them subhumans. That's what we were trained. He's a subhuman. If you tell a child long enough something, the child starts believing it. And Hitler wanted to build a master race, and we fit his corner there in this, and we were blonde, most of us were blonde, blue-eyed, and we were sort of the elite of his class to build a master race. I have a cousin who comes from a Lebensborn, which was a castle where as many as wanted German soldiers could have team up with some women and have babies. In August prior to that year, I stepped in a rose thorn in our garden, and that rose thorn went into my foot and was stuck inside the foot. So the doctor said to my mother, he was a Nazi doctor, a very mean guy, said to my mother, no, your child will not escape with you. She stays here. I lived in a veterans hospital with all the soldiers that came back from the battlefield, and the doctor said, your daughter has bone cancer. My mother was a nurse, a Red Cross nurse, and she said, I'm taking my child now and not any later. 2 days later, the Russians entered our village. So my mother carried me on her back. The doctor yelled and screamed at my mother that she was disobedient, but because my mother was also the wife of a high-ranking officer, he couldn't do very much. So then that night, a few nights later, I couldn't walk. My mom put me on a sled. It was 20 below zero and lots of snow. And at 1 o'clock in the middle of the night, we escaped. And we caught the last train that ever left the village. Hopped on the train, my mom, everybody was screaming, nurse, 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 help me, I cannot find my child. If you ever have seen a movie of people escaping, it's absolutely horrific. So my mom, having the Red Cross uniform on, she shoved us first into the train, and then she hopped on and we left and went to Dresden and west. My mom said, I said, Mom, where are we leaving? I'm tired, I want to go to bed. And she says, I don't know where we're leaving. I said, Mom, you have to know somewhere where we're going. I was almost 10 then, 10 years age. And anyway, and that bothered me tremendously. I couldn't sleep at night. If there was even a bed to sleep, sometimes we couldn't sleep. There was nothing, no food to be got, nothing. We just ran for our life. And in Dresden, we met my aunt there. My aunt was a Nazi too, and my mom said, I'm leaving, something horrible is going to happen in Dresden, which used to be all East Germany until 1989. And my aunt yelled and screamed at my mother, no, Hitler will still get us out of this mess, and don't worry and stay here. But we left the night before the Americans and the British formed like huge triangles of aeroplanes, and they absolutely flattened Dresden. The zoo broke out. Dresden had one of
That was the biggest single concentrated bombing in the entire war.
Yeah, because they had not precision guided the military equipment, so they called it, they carpet bombed us. We were in an air raid shelter in the mountains, and my mom brought us into the mountains to my godmother. You know what is a godmother? I still have a spoon, fork, and knife from my godmother here that went through us when we came with us when we escaped. So we looked through a little peephole, and the sky was like, when you see a sunset here, that's what the sky was like, on fire, because they just came down in squadrons, one after another, and they had to do this while we went then to Austria. But the Germans were hated in Austria too, because what we did to them, Hitler just invaded Austria. And they asked my mother, the mayor of the village where we lived, asked my mother if she wanted to become an Austrian, then we could have stayed there. But my mom was a very proud German, and she said, no, not by my life, I will never become an Austrian. Even so, we have the same language, Austrian and Germany. And so we escaped further into South Germany over a bridge one night, over a river. And the river was bombed, the bridge was bombed, and somebody had put 2 planks this wide about, and the tractor or jeep or whatever it was that had to get over there had to put the wheels exactly on these boards, or we would have all been gone down in a raging river. But in all this, and I share this with you, at that time I was not a believer in God, but looking back now, all these many times, it was really God who had saved our lives. We once drove through a burning forest, and we were not even touched by the smoke or anything. So there were lots of miracles. My father was all these 6 years in Japan. He went on a submarine and then on another boat. It took him 6 months to get from Bordeaux, from France, to Japan. And then the American Red Cross found families together after the war. You could write to the American Red Cross, and they found my father in Japan, and he was repatriated, and we saw him after 6 years. And I'll tell you a cute little story. My mom, we went to my grandmother in West Germany. We had all escaped too by horse and buggy, and there were about 15 of us. My cousins were there, and my mom picked up my father from South Germany, from Ludwigshafen, and my mother said, my brother is the oldest, it says, like in The Sound of Music, she put us all in one row, my brother first. My brother was the tallest, then me, then my 2 sisters. And we were trained under the Nazi regime that girls never wore pants. Look, I'm wearing pants now. But we had to wear skirts. That a girl would never wear pants, and we all had long hair and braids usually, and the girls had to make a curtsy and lift their skirt sort of like a princess, right? And guys clicked their heels and made a bow like this, and then they named their name. So my brother went forward, bowed his head forward, and he said, "I'm Walter, your son, and I flunked math." Sort of cute, the story. Then came me, made a curtsy, said, "Father, I'm Jutta, and I'm glad you came home. You can protect me from this mean guy who always pulled my hair in school." You know, guys can be a little bit like this way. And then my middle sister went forward and said, "And I am Elke, your daughter, and I have nothing to say," she said. And then my youngest daughter, my youngest sister, she was only at that time maybe, she must have been six. So she was hiding behind my mother, and she was so shy because she says, "I don't know you. You can't be my father. I don't know you." But see, that's what the years brought with it, you know. So that was just a little cute story in between. And then I went to school in Germany, but nothing was really right yet, you know. Everything, the whole country was flattened by bombs, and people had to scrape food together. My mom and I sometimes went begging from house to house, like a couple would come to your house now and say, "Could you give me a glass of milk or some bread or something?" Because we were 4 kids. And I remember my brother at night, he was so hungry, he would cry and say, Mom, don't you have a morsel of old dry bread or something? I'm so hungry." But it's just really also a blessing in a way that we went through this hard time, because when you have nothing, absolutely nothing, not even a clothes to wear, just rags, then you appreciate things here so much more, you know. And then everything is like almost a miracle. Like, we didn't have hot water or running water. We had to carry the water in buckets from a mile away in the village pump, and had to bring it in. And now my husband and I, when we have a hot shower, we always thank God that we can go into the tub and have a hot shower, you know. So you learn to be thankful for little things.